His next words were, "I'm not going to hurt you, I just need to use your phone." And that's
Okay.
when I gave him my phone.
Okay.
He just kept asking his mom to call him an Uber. And he wasn't responding to anything that she was asking. He just kept repeating, "Call me an Uber. I need an Uber now."
Very interesting testimony here from the witness that says that Darrell Brooks Jr., after the incident, emerged in between two homes in the darkness, didn't have shoes on, didn't have a jacket or a sweater, was shivering in the cold, asked her and her husband if he could use their phone. Now, she was a little reluctant, and it sounds like her husband was as well. At that point in time, Darrell said, "I'm not going to hurt you." And at that point, she let him use the phone. How's it going, everyone? Christian Duke, Sight Sounds Flavors on YouTube, sightsoundsflavors.com. If at any point in time you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. That really, really helps the channel. Ring the bell for notifications so you won't miss a single video, and leave a comment down below. We're going to talk more about this. We're just kind of like creating the foundation, and then we're going to really, really get into it. So don't, if you stop now, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So when Darrell says he's not going to hurt her, which is interesting because her husband's there, her husband probably would have destroyed Darrell. We all know Darrell doesn't fight men. He only fights with women. But, I think that the witness said that they were very shook up by everything that was going on. Remember, this is a witness that saw Darrell barrel down at one point, and is also a witness that said that she had witnessed a police officer fire 3 shots at the SUV. So again, and I didn't even know that any officer had fired at the SUV, which is very interesting. So when she gives the phone over, this is what the video is about. So this is where I kind of want your attention. But again, if your attention is prior to where I said, recanted what, not recanted, but reiterated what the witness said about how he wasn't going to hurt her. You want to comment on that, that's fine. But for me, the focus is going to be this. Once he had the phone, Darrell called Dawn and asked Dawn in a very urgent manner to call him an Uber, and asked the witness and her husband for the address because he didn't know where he was at. And apparently they were very close to the witness's husband's workplace, and the witness's husband was able to give Darrell directions or the address, which he then gave to Dawn. In the process, he had asked where could he go to warm up because he was obviously freezing. And the husband pointed to Aries, which it sounds like maybe a store or hotel, I don't know, but a place that has a lobby. And he returned the phone to the witness, and he went to this place to warm up. Now, the witness says that it sounded like Dawn, because she said that he called mom, Dawn, was asking a bunch of questions. But when pressed as to what those questions were, the witness obviously couldn't hear. But what I want to know is, what could Dawn have been asking Darrell? A lot of people believe that Dawn did not appear in court because she was scared of being arrested. I don't necessarily agree with that because, it wasn't like Dawn was like, a member of the Taliban or something and she was hiding in a cave and her whereabouts were unknown. If they wanted to arrest her, they could have arrested her at any point in time. But I do I do respect the position that maybe she didn't show up because of concerns, legal concerns, I suppose. But she also gave interviews to local TV, and she wasn't trying to secret herself. But I do think that I would imagine that at some point in time, the thought must have crossed her mind, when she was calling in her car stolen, for example, that, whoever called or whoever Darrell asked to borrow the phone was probably standing in front of Darrell while she was asking him questions or talking to him, and that might come back to haunt her. The fact is, and again, I know a lot of people will argue, listen, a mother will never turn in her son, but, anything short of that, she could easily be argued to be an accessory after the fact. Whether, she was able to call an Uber or not, to me is besides the point. The fact is, I'm sure that she knew something was up. I'm sure that some sort of vehicle description had gone up. I'm sure that she could put 2 + 2 together. And because of the urgency in Darrell's voice, and I'm sure that that was probably the only time in Darrell's life that he asked his mom to call him an Uber. I don't know. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she did. I don't know. But the fact is, I would love to know what questions she was asking him. And even though he was not able or was not going to answer, it sounds like she was going to call him the Uber just the same, because it stands to reason that if Darrell asked the witness and her husband for the address where he was at, it's because Dawn was going to facilitate an exit for him. And so it's just one of those things, because, we've seen other clips where he was on someone's porch. We've seen other videos. I don't know how many people he actually spoke to. I don't know if this one witness is the only witness he spoke to. I don't know if he made more than one call. And I regretfully, I have to be transparent about that. Maybe there's more to this. I don't know. But to this one particular witness, even though Darrell was, talking a mile a minute, shivering in the cold and terrified, Dawn, it sounds like, was still going to send him that Uber. And so, it's a situation where I think Dawn, I'm sure at some point in time, probably thought she was going to get charged with something. And I just would love to know what she was asking him, and could one of the questions have been, did you have something to do with what I'm seeing on TV? Did you have something to do with this Waukesha Christmas parade? And maybe it didn't. But what's wrong? What happened? I can see those questions. But just because of the gravity of the crime, I feel that it must have at least crossed her mind that Darrell was involved. And I would imagine that a vehicle description would have gone out, because, again, she called the car stolen, from everything I've heard. Now, was she supposed to set her son up and say, hey, this is the address you're at. Okay, I'm going to call you an Uber. Hang up, call police and say, I think my son was involved. I don't want to get him hurt. Can you promise me that you'll respect his life if I tell you his address or where he's at? That sort of thing would have been the right thing to do. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, that's giving up your own son. Yes, it is, but your son just killed 6 people and injured 80. Your son needs to go to prison. And here's another thing for you. If any of the survivors, now I don't want to, cast any of the survivors in a bad light, but if I was a survivor, or I was the father, the husband, the son of someone that Darrell Brooks maimed or worse killed, I'll give you an example. The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. When he was apprehended, it wasn't by police. He was apprehended by residents. And they pummeled him to the point that law enforcement had to come and save him. Otherwise, they would have ended him right then and there. And they were hitting him with pipes, bottles, fists, spitting on him, because this was a guy that would break into people's homes and sexually assault them and then murder them. And no one was immune. Elderly, children, women, men, it didn't matter. He was a burglar / serial killer. And when his composite went out and they saw him, they took him to town. They were going to end him. And so I could see where Dawn might have said, listen, I will tell you where my son is, but please respect his life, please. I could see something like that, and that would have been the right thing to do. I don't think she did that. And so, it's almost a miracle for Darrell and for justice that he wasn't apprehended by people that knew who he was and what he had done. That's a question that I don't think has been discussed much in commentary. And it's not one that I'm not looking to glorify violence or glorify mob justice, but the reality of the matter is if anyone who lost a loved one to this guy would have been able to get their hands on him, I don't think it would have been very pretty. I really don't think it would have been very pretty. So I don't think he was just shivering from the cold. I think he was shivering because he was terrified. And he was able to confuse, because it wasn't so much convince, he was able to confuse these folks because at the end of the day, he was barefoot, he was cold, he was saying he wasn't going to hurt them. And maybe in their mind, they wanted to fear him, but they wanted to be humane and they wanted to be open-minded. And they took him at his word, gave him their phone. They would definitely not be accessories after the fact. If anything, they're victims like everyone else. But Dawn, I can't say the same about Dawn, because I feel like Dawn probably knew very early on, either because Darrell told her or because she could put it all together in her head. I just wish I knew what she was asking him. What do you think she was asking him? I look forward to reading it in the comments.